Today I want to dispel the myth of religion, but more specifically Christianity, as that's the religion I was force fed as a child until I reached my teenage years and I was able to see the hypocrisy of it all. The Catholic Church is so money orientated, it's unbelievable. It was good enough for Jesus to sit out on a hill to preach to his flock, but there's no way you'll get a Catholic priest or a bishop or the Pope to sit out on the field preaching God's word. No, they have to be surrounded in extravagant churches, covered with expensive ornate and drinking Jesus' blood out of golden goblets. I mean, if you take the Catholic Church or the Vatican especially, they're like extravagance personified. While the children they're supposed to be loving and protecting, God's children, are starving all over the world. Another thing that really casts doubt on the validity of Christianity is the behaviour of its priests. Now, the recent Catholic priest scandal has come as absolutely no surprise to me. But what does shock me is how a priest, if he truly believes in his religion and in God, would risk going to hell for the sake of messing about with a few kids. Why would you risk it? If a priest is involved in paedophilia, then it's got to show that he doesn't believe in what he's preaching, he doesn't believe in his faith, and he doesn't believe in God. So if the priests who are supposed to preach to us don't believe, why the hell should we believe? Now, speaking of paedophilia, in this day and age, it's classed as one of the top crimes, one of the worst crimes any human being could commit. But it begs the question, why in the Bible, the Word of God, yeah, is there no mention of paedophilia at all? Not one mention of sexual offences against children or paedophilia in the Bible anywhere. And obviously, it isn't one of its commandments either. So, what's the reason for this? I mean, God in his commandments tells us to honour our mother and father, not to steal, not to kill, to honour the Sabbath, but it doesn't tell us not to rape young children. Why? Could it be that the elitist authors of the Bible simply couldn't put any mention of paedophilia in the Bible for fear of incriminating themselves? Sounds feasible to me. In fact, it's the only explanation I've got. Just like Islam relies on the existence of Muhammad and the word of the Quran, Christianity hinges so heavily on the existence of Jesus and the word of the Bible. But the problem with that is the Bible is so full of holes. When it comes to the Bible and Christianity, and God, probably the most asked question ever is this: if God is so powerful and so loving of his children, why does he allow such atrocities to happen all over the world? And the answer that the priests or religious Christians will give nearly all the time is simply, oh, well, God invented man, but he doesn't interfere in man's affairs, or God works in mysterious ways. Now, that would be an acceptable answer, except that all through the Bible there are examples of God's interference in man's affairs. For instance, when Abraham was about to sacrifice his child to show his loyalty to God, as the knife came down, God's interfering hand prevented the child from being killed. So it begs the question, while thousands and thousands of God's children were being murdered and butchered in places like Rwanda and Cambodia by machete, where was God's interfering hand then? Why didn't God intervene and save the lives of those children, his children? Also, when Moses was being pursued, God parted the waves of the Red Sea to allow Moses to escape. Well, 100 years ago, when the Titanic sank and 800 of God's children were sinking into the Atlantic Ocean. Surely God could have intervened then to save those lives, but he chose not to. And also, when God was annoyed with the actions of his children, his people, in the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, he razed them to the ground with a mixture of fire and brimstone to punish them for their actions. What happened? Did he run out of fire and brimstone by the time the Nazis came along, or the Khmer Rouge, or any number of horrific despotic regimes there's been in the last hundreds and hundreds of years? The thing with God's interference is that it's funny how the end of God's interference coincides with the end of the Bible. In other words, all through the Bible, God's interference is evident. But in the last 2,000 years, there's been no God's interference. No matter how many natural disasters or atrocities or genocides there's been, in the last 2,000 years, God hasn't interfered once. The other thing the Bible asks us to do is to believe the impossible. It asks us to believe in the resurrection, that a man can die 3 days later, get up and walk away, which, as human beings, we know isn't possible. It also asks us to believe in a virgin birth. Now, I don't know if 2,000 years ago they had IVF treatment, but I do know that the only way a virgin birth can take place now is through IVF treatment. They've also asked us to believe that we were born with original sin. So when a little baby is born now, as soon as it pops out of mummy's belly and it's 2 minutes old, it's already a sinner, because 6,000 years ago Eve got a bit hungry and decided to take a bite out of a Granny Smith. Ridiculous. Other contradictions in the Bible include incest. So Adam and Eve are supposedly the first two people on earth. So therefore, all of Adam and Eve's children would be related. If that's the case, then we're all born out of incest. But the Bible allows incest for so long until God then decides that incestuous behaviour is a sin. So the first Adam and Eve and their children and a few generations, all born through incest, are fine. But at a certain stage in the Bible, God starts talking about incest being wrong. If something's wrong, it's wrong. When you question Christians about this, the answer you're given is, well, the first few generations were pure. So after that, then the incest began to take hold. And when God could see that abnormalities were happening, he decided then incest was wrong. Couldn't make this shit up, could you? Speaking of Adam and Eve, we're also expected to believe that, let's take Adam and Eve as two similar race people. So let's say they were both Caucasians. We're expected to believe that just two people 6,000 years ago who were both the same race have managed to spawn billions and billions and billions and billions of descendants. But not only that, of these billions and billions and billions of descendants, they've managed to spawn 30, 40, 50 different races. So they've managed to spawn white people, black people, Chinese, Japanese, Red Indians, Eskimos, albinos, Aborigines. Wow. When it comes to creation, I have my very own question. And my question with creation is this: if God created the earth and 5 days later created man, he obviously created earth for man to live on. So why then did he create such a volatile planet? A planet full of dangers, fraught with dangers, with earthquakes and volcanoes and oceans of water, all things that are perilous to man. Why would he create such a volatile earth for his children to live on? He's all powerful. He could have just created a peaceful, very, very much less volatile earth. He chose not to. But another question that's asked about creation is the actual beginning of. Now, if the Bible's to believe, earth was created somewhere about 7,000 years ago. This is basically by counting up from Adam and Eve and their descendants and the generations up to Jesus. So from Adam and Eve to Jesus, through the Bible can only be 5,000 years. Add another 2,000 years to present time. So the earth, according to the Bible, can only be about 6,000 to 7,000 years old. But archaeologists and scientists are still finding now fossilized remains of animals who lived here millions of years ago, not 10,000 years ago, millions of years ago. So how can the earth only be 6,000 years old when there's physical proof that animals lived here millions of years ago? Another question about creation is good old Neanderthal man. When you ask Christians about Neanderthal man, Christians have denied Neanderthal man for years and years and years until the evidence became so strong that they had to admit there was a Neanderthal man. So their answer now is this: Neanderthal man was pre-flood man. That's the great flood where Noah saved the earth. So if pre-flood man was Neanderthal man and only 8 men were saved on Noah's ark, them 8 men were pre-flood men, so they were Neanderthal men. So Noah was a Neanderthal man. So the post-flood men were Neanderthal men. So whichever way you look at it, yeah, we have descended or evolved from Neanderthal man. Makes sense to me. I hate being a cynic, and I would love to be wrong in everything I say. I truly do want to believe in religion and God and faith, but there's such a nagging doubt in my mind, and it's this: if God wanted his children to believe in him, to truly believe in his existence and in everything they're being told through the Bible, why wouldn't he just make us stupid creatures like the rest of the animals on earth? Why would he allow us to develop into intelligent, intellectual beings whose intelligence allows us to basically see a great big lie for what it is? Feel free to like, dislike, argue, comment, share, subscribe. Until next time, take care.